I'm Jinny Beyer. Welcome to my studio and our border print series. I've been designing and finding creative ways to use border print fabrics in my work for almost 40 years. I hope you'll find this series as exciting as I have and be wanting to try some of the methods for yourself. My border print designs contain two main elements, a narrow stripe and a wide stripe, and the darker stripes in between are the seam allowance that you use for cutting the stripes apart so you're not wasting any of the fabric. The designs also have a mirror image motif in them. You can see here those vertical mirrors, and you also have horizontal mirror lines. Typically I'll use a border print to frame a quilt. In this case with Lotus, I use the entire border print, the narrow stripe, the seam allowance in between, and the wider stripe. But more typically I would cut the stripes apart and put a different fabric in between with a color that might enhance the quilt better. So here in the Miyako quilt, I've got the narrow stripe, the wide stripe, and a different fabric in between, a little wider, and balances out the structure of the quilt. For this lesson we're going to be talking about border print squares. They're a lot of fun to do and they're easy to cut. Here you see a typical patchwork design with a large square in the center. Anytime I see that large square, I use it as a perfect opportunity for making a border print square to go in there instead. So I take the square from the center of this design, divide it diagonally from corner to corner, make a template out of it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance added, and then I put a mirror line to help me line it up exactly with the mirror image of the fabric. And then I place that template onto one of the mirror image motifs in the design of the fabric, and I'll cut that out. I try to have a line, you see the little gold line, the arrow indicates, falling just within the seam line of the piece. Here it is with the seam allowance. You take the seam allowance off, and this is what 4 of these triangles would look like in the finished size when they're all put together finally. And then we go back to the original design with that big square in the middle and see what the difference is when you add the border print square to it. Here's the same design, it's called Memory Star, with a different fabric. Here's the design without this border print, and here it is with. Yet another design here, square in the center, smaller one, but it still creates a nice enhancement to the overall design. Where you place the template on the fabric is really important because it can dictate so many different types of designs. Here's one square with just the seam allowance taken off so you can see the finished result. Move it just ever so slightly to another spot and you get a completely different design. Move it yet again, always keeping a line inside the seam line so it nicely frames the design. Still another, you can see how ever so slightly those are being moved to create the new design. There are a lot of uses for border print squares. In the Marrakesh block, the corner triangles have border print in them, and when the blocks all come together, they form these nice little medallions at the corners. Also, you can use a border print as an alternate block. In this case for Sweet Tea, we've taken the diamonds in the block itself and cut them from the horizontal mirror on the border print. Then we've made the triangle for the alternate block the same way as before and placed it on the fabric. And I mark a place on the fabric to use as a guide for when I cut 3 more identical triangles. These 2 blocks are put on point and then used in the quilt alternating. Rajasthan has a large border print square within the middle of the quilt itself, enhanced by the frame around the outside edge with the same border print. Sophia has border print squares joining the star points. Italian tiles is a fun quilt to do because this one was made with leftover border pieces from other projects. It's a good way for you to be able to experiment with lots of different designs. Carol Nicholas made pincushions for all of her quilting friends from leftover bits of border prints from other projects. I hope you've enjoyed the first of our series on working with border prints, making border print squares, and give it a try, even if it's just a small square for a pincushion or a throw pillow or a block within a quilt or a whole quilt. I'm sure you'll be hooked on borders by the time you finish.